She sat in the courtroom wearing the same calm expression she'd worn when she booked the flight, the same expression she'd worn when she rented the car, the same expression she'd worn when she waited outside the apartment complex for 3 hours in the dark. Caitlin Thompson didn't look like a killer. She looked like someone who sold skincare products and posted motivational quotes on Instagram. But beneath that carefully constructed facade was a rage so consuming it had driven her across 2,000 miles to commit murder. The courtroom was silent except for the shuffle of papers and the quiet sobbing from the victim's family. Judge Morrison looked down at the woman before him and saw something he'd seen 100 times before. A life destroyed by obsession, a future erased by a single horrific choice. This wasn't a crime of passion in the heat of the moment. This was calculated, methodical, cold-blooded in every sense of the word. Caitlin Thompson had flown from Phoenix to Tampa with one purpose: to eliminate the woman who had replaced her, to erase Kayla Green from existence. And she'd almost gotten away with it. The story began 18 months earlier when Caitlin's relationship with Marcus Johnson started to crumble. They'd been together for 4 years, living in a comfortable suburb of Phoenix where Caitlin ran a small but successful beauty business. She specialized in eyelash extensions and skincare treatments, building a loyal clientele through social media marketing and word-of-mouth referrals. Marcus worked in commercial real estate, and from the outside they looked like the perfect modern couple. But behind closed doors, the relationship had been dying for months. Marcus had grown distant. He worked late more often. He stopped responding to her texts with the same enthusiasm. Caitlin felt him slipping away but refused to acknowledge what was happening. She convinced herself it was work stress. She told herself they just needed to reconnect. She planned elaborate date nights and surprised him with expensive gifts. Nothing worked. The more she tried to hold on, the further he pulled away. When Marcus finally ended it, Caitlin didn't accept it gracefully. She called him obsessively. She showed up at his apartment unannounced. She sent him long, rambling texts, alternating between begging him to come back and accusing him of ruining her life. Marcus blocked her number. He blocked her on social media. He told his friends and family not to give her any information about him. He wanted a clean break, a fresh start, a life without the constant drama. What Marcus didn't know was that Caitlin had never really let go. She created fake social media accounts to monitor his activity. She drove past his apartment to see if his car was there. She asked mutual acquaintances about him under the guise of casual conversation. This went on for months. Marcus moved on with his life, unaware that his ex-girlfriend had become a ghost haunting his digital footprint. Then Marcus met Kayla Green. She was 28, a kindergarten teacher with a bright smile and an infectious laugh. They met at a mutual friend's barbecue, and the connection was immediate. Kayla was everything Caitlin wasn't. She was easygoing where Caitlin was intense. She was emotionally available where Caitlin was guarded. Within 3 months, Marcus had fallen in love. Within 6 months, he'd asked Kayla to move in with him. But there was one complication. Marcus had accepted a job transfer to Tampa. It was a promotion he couldn't refuse, and Kayla was willing to make the move with him. They packed up their lives in Phoenix and headed to Florida to start fresh. Marcus felt relief as the plane took off. He was finally free from the past. He was finally moving forward. He had no idea that Caitlin had been watching everything unfold through her network of fake profiles and reconnaissance missions. Caitlin discovered the move through a comment on Marcus's mother's Facebook page. The mother had posted about being sad her son was moving so far away, but excited for his new chapter with such a sweet girl. Caitlin felt something inside her snap. It wasn't just that Marcus had moved on. It was that he'd moved on so completely, so publicly, so happily. He'd taken the life she thought they were building together and given it to someone else. The obsession that had been simmering for months exploded into something darker. Caitlin began researching Kayla Green with frightening intensity. She found out where Kayla worked. She discovered her daily routines. She learned that Kayla went to the gym every morning at 6 and stopped at Starbucks on the way to the elementary school where she taught. Caitlin studied Kayla's social media posts like they were textbooks, memorizing her favorite restaurants, her weekend habits, her friend group. And then Caitlin made a decision that would destroy multiple lives. She would go to Tampa. She would confront Kayla. She would make her leave Marcus. And if Kayla refused, Caitlin would make sure she could never have him either. On a Tuesday in March, Caitlin told her clients she was taking a week off for a family emergency. She booked a flight to Tampa under her own name, not even trying to hide her travel plans. She rented a car at the airport. She checked into a budget hotel near the neighborhood where Marcus and Kayla had settled. She spent 2 days watching their apartment, learning their patterns, waiting for the right moment. That moment came on a Thursday evening. Marcus had a work dinner that would keep him out until late. Kayla came home from school around 4:30, carrying bags of groceries and art supplies for her classroom. She was alone. She was vulnerable. She had no idea that death was waiting for her in the parking lot. Caitlin approached Kayla as she was unloading her car. She called out Kayla's name. When Kayla turned around, confused, Caitlin introduced herself as an old friend of Marcus's from Phoenix. She said she was in town for business and wanted to catch up. Kayla, naturally friendly and trusting, smiled and said of course. She had no reason to suspect danger from this well-dressed woman with the perfect makeup and pleasant demeanor. What happened next was captured on the apartment complex's security cameras. Caitlin followed Kayla toward the apartment building. They were talking casually, Kayla carrying her bags, Caitlin walking beside her with her hands in her jacket pockets. Then, in a moment, so sudden the camera barely registered it, Caitlin pulled out a knife. She attacked Kayla with a fury that shocked even the detectives who later reviewed the footage. Kayla fought back. She dropped her bags and tried to defend herself. She scratched at Caitlin's face and arms, desperate to get away. She screamed for help. A neighbor heard the commotion and called 911. But by the time anyone reached them, Kayla was on the ground, bleeding from multiple stab wounds. Caitlin stood over her, knife still in hand, breathing hard. When she saw the neighbor approaching, Caitlin ran. Kayla Green died in the parking lot before the ambulance arrived. She was 28 years old. She'd been in Tampa for less than 4 months. She'd been planning her first parent-teacher conferences. She'd been talking about adopting a dog with Marcus. She'd been living a normal, happy life until a woman she'd never met decided she didn't deserve to exist. Caitlin made it back to her rental car and drove to the airport. She bought a ticket for the next flight back to Phoenix using cash. She cleaned herself up in an airport bathroom, washing the blood from her hands and changing her clothes. She thought she'd covered her tracks. She thought she could return to her life and pretend nothing had happened. She was wrong. The security footage was clear enough to identify her. The rental car was traced back to her name. And most damning of all, DNA evidence from under Kayla's fingernails matched Caitlin perfectly. The same beauty business that had built her life became the tool that destroyed it. Caitlin's DNA was already in the system from a previous background check she'd undergone for her cosmetology license. The police had her identity within 48 hours. Caitlin was arrested at her apartment in Phoenix 3 days after the murder. She didn't resist. She didn't even seem surprised. She sat calmly as they read her rights and placed her in handcuffs. When detectives asked her why she did it, she said something that chilled everyone in the interrogation room. She took what was mine. I was just taking it back. The trial lasted 2 weeks. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence: security footage, DNA, flight records, rental car receipts, text messages Caitlin had sent to friends expressing her anger about Marcus's new relationship. The defense tried to argue temporary insanity, claiming Caitlin had suffered a mental breakdown, but the premeditation was too clear, the planning too deliberate. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Guilty of first-degree murder. Now she sat in court waiting to hear her sentence. Kyla's family had given victim impact statements that left the courtroom in tears. Her mother talked about the daughter she'd never see get married. Her father described finding out his little girl was gone. Her sister spoke about the kindergarten class that had drawn pictures for their teacher who would never return. Marcus sat in the back row, his face hollow, his eyes empty. He blamed himself even though everyone told him he shouldn't. Judge Morrison looked at Caitlin Thompson and saw no remorse, no tears, no acknowledgement of the devastation she'd caused. She'd tracked down an innocent woman and murdered her out of jealousy and possessiveness. She'd stolen a life because she couldn't accept that a relationship had ended. The judge had seen many terrible things in his career, but this case haunted him in a particular way. Miss Thompson, I have no discretion in this sentencing, nor would I want any, Judge Morrison said, his voice steady but filled with disgust. You tracked down, located, and murdered Miss Green in cold blood. Your crime was heinous and calculated. The court sentences you to life in prison without the possibility of parole. You will spend the remainder of your life behind bars. The gavel fell. Caitlin didn't flinch. She was led out of the courtroom in chains, while Kyla's family embraced each other, crying with relief and grief. Justice had been served, but it couldn't bring Kayla back. It couldn't restore the future she'd lost. It couldn't heal the trauma Marcus would carry forever. Caitlin Thompson flew across the country to kill a woman she'd never met. She destroyed multiple lives because she couldn't let go of a relationship that was over. She traded her freedom and her future for a few minutes of violence fueled by obsession. And now she'll spend the rest of her life in a cell, haunted by the choice she made in a parking lot in Tampa. The case became a cautionary tale about the dangers of obsession and the importance of recognizing warning signs. Marcus spoke publicly about how he'd ignored red flags during his relationship with Caitlin, her controlling behavior, her inability to accept boundaries, her escalating harassment after their breakup. He encouraged others in similar situations to take threats seriously and seek help before tragedy strikes. Kayla's family established a scholarship in her name for aspiring teachers. They wanted her legacy to be about the joy she brought to children's lives, not the violence that ended her own. Every year, A graduating education major receives the Kayla Green Memorial Scholarship, ensuring that her passion for teaching lives on. As for Caitlin Thompson, she sits in a Florida prison, serving a sentence that will never end. She'd never run another business. She'd never travel freely. She'll never build the life she thought she deserved. All because she couldn't accept a simple truth that destroys so many lives. You cannot force someone to love you. And when you try, you lose everything, including yourself.